Simon, um, do you see any signs out there that there's going to be a kind of growing backlash against FIFA's insatiable, it seems, money making? Or are the fans just too invested in the sport and the clubs and the whole excitement around the World Cup? I mean, it seems like we regularly have this kind of debate around FIFA, and then the World Cup begins and people are just swept away by the
Yeah,
excitement.
they are, and they should be, because you also have to remember the World Cup doesn't belong to FIFA. The World Cup, as Miguel says, it's the people's sport. Everybody loves this. It's a real source of joy for humanity. It unites whole nations on the sofa. It's about the last shared experience that people have with each other, where not everyone is watching their own content on their own phone, but people are gathering in living rooms and bars, enjoying it together. We show in our book Soccernomics, Stefan Szymanski and I, reduces suicides in European countries that participate because the kind of communal feeling is so strong. People feel swept up in a greater whole. So people shouldn't boycott the World Cup because of FIFA. They should enjoy the World Cup and separate it from their feelings about FIFA. You still have great players and amazing underdog stories. It's all wonderful. What you are seeing now is that because in the run up to the World Cup, there isn't much soccer to write about, there's just the stuff that we're talking about, Infantino and Trump. There is this mood of kind of negativity, and people are understandably very upset about all these things. And so the World Cup starts in this haze of negative publicity, which is entirely FIFA's doing and fault. And I wish it were different. I don't think FIFA is going to be reformed. As Miguel and Alexandra has said, there is no obvious route, there is no prospect. So I think we're going to live with this beautiful sport, beautiful World Cup, terrible FIFA stasis that we're in. And I don't think that saying, well, I'm not going to watch the World Cup is a good solution for people.
Alexandra, what are you watching for of the next month?
From a governance perspective, I
Well, as a soccer fan, I'm assuming you're going to watch the World Cup, right?
yeah, no,
Um,
I'm going to some of the games. They're here in Vancouver. I share the kind of schizophrenic impulse of the rest of the world, where the sport is fantastic and exhilarating, and the sense of community that Simon describes is wonderful. And I will just grit my teeth and try to ignore the kind of cancerous barnacle of FIFA off to one side. But yeah, that's the only way to proceed, unless we imagine we are going to get some leverage with a boycott, and I just don't see that happening at all, because of the passion for the sport. So I'll be watching the games, attending some, watching others, and enjoying it alongside the world's fans.
any betting going on about who's going to win the World Cup, other than you, Miguel, who, you say Portugal, right? Simon, I mean, the thing about the World Cup, it does seem to produce a lot of surprises along the way.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, you can't actually predict a World Cup because in a league, usually the richest club wins with the best players. 38 matches, luck tends to even out. World Cup is all about luck. You have five knockout rounds this time. Most will be decided by penalty shootouts or a single goal. So the ball that rolls off out of off the post rather than in off the post can make the difference. So that's one reason why people love the World Cup. A, there's a huge chance of underdogs winning an individual game. So, Curacao is not going to win the World Cup, but 150,000 people, they might win a game. And the other is it's like a mirror of life with all the kind of contingency and luck and unexpected events. So that makes it such a perfect drama. The World Cup isn't even particularly high quality. There's much better soccer on average in the Champions League or the Premier League now. But we don't watch the World Cup for the quality. We watch it for the drama and because the nation is at stake. Who's going to win? France and Spain are probably the best teams. That doesn't mean much.
I disagree with the last point of Simon, but no, I'm just
Right. Well, if there are one more call to the audience, as anyone wants to put their hands up to ask something, now's the moment. Otherwise, we will, I think, say goodbye to everybody and wait, one moment. Here we go. A question from Brian Bird. What about the aftermath, the financial costs to the host cities? Very good point. It seems like FIFA gets all the money, and yet none of it is shared with the hosts. New York, New Jersey paying for its security, transportation, and passing it on to fans. A $25 train fare from New York City to the stadium will be $100. Although I believe that they now made some kind of arrangement to bring that fare down. But that's a very good point. I mean, to a lot of these governors and mayors and so on, they didn't vote for this, and they certainly didn't ask the voters whether or not they wanted it.
Can I briefly answer that? Because we discussed this in Soccernomics. Yes, the model is FIFA takes all the money and the host cities and country have all the costs. Luckily, in the US, Mexico, and Canada, there were no new stadiums to build. But yeah, all the costs of policing security are for the host cities. It was their fault in the US that they bid. So Chicago and Minneapolis were smart enough to realize the financial is terrible and they didn't bid. So these other cities have been landed with it. Then there was this belief, well, you get tourists. In fact, it suppresses tourism in cities like New York or Vancouver or Miami, where normally in summer a lot of people come as a tourist. Those regular flows of tourists think, well, I'm not going to go now because there's a World Cup on. It will be more expensive. There'll be security hassle. So I'll go somewhere else. I'm not going to go to Vancouver this summer. I'll find another holiday destination. So very often you see actually that the tourism falls rather than rises as a result of a World Cup.
There's strong economic evidence that usually big sports events of this time do not bring benefits to the hosting countries. I mean, the cost-benefit analysis ends up being that the costs outweigh the benefits for hosting countries. It's not always the case. It depends on circumstances, but overwhelming, the evidence goes in that direction. And that's the reason why increasingly you will see, and we are seeing, that is autocratic regimes that get this to host these events because their benefits are of a different nature. It's the political capital that they gain by hosting these events. And I think, unfortunately, we'll see more and more of that.
Yeah, I would agree with Simon's point about the stadium. The one thing that is encouraging about this World Cup spread across 3 countries is that there wasn't a lot of new building, which from an environmental and financial perspective is really important. But there's no question that Vancouver and Toronto are bracing for the financial hangover after the fun is over.
There's one last question, although I believe we've sort of covered this, which is, could players have a role in pushing for reforms? Do they have enough influence to demand changes within FIFA? And I think it was either Simon or Miguel, one of you said that there's no incentive for them to do that. And I believe I remember this in Qatar, where, no one really among the players' organizations spoke up about human rights abuses or workers who died. Is that correct?
So, Simon, but please go ahead,
No,
Simon.
Go ahead, Mingo. Go ahead.
No, players they either go through the ranks of the football organizations, and they often start by being co-opted as ambassadors to get a certain visibility, and they are used by the FIFA itself. And some of them then manage to acquire a position in the National Football Association. But that means that when they arrive at the high levels of power, they play by the same rules that the others have always played. They are one more element of machine. If the president of FIFA, I'm sorry to say, would have been Platini instead of Infantino, the evolution of FIFA would have been exactly the same from my point of view. It wouldn't change a bit, no difference. And in fact, as president of UEFA, Platini was no different than any other president will be. And that's one thing that players will do. The players would only be factored to promote change if their participation will be part of a much deeper reform in the electoral mechanisms of FIFA. So if FIFA, for example, if the election for FIFA president or FIFA council will no longer take place under the current rules, but the electoral universe will be dramatically changed to open up to participation in the elections by supporters organizations, athletes organizations, more minimum female representation in the electoral, in those that vote themselves. That could change FIFA if you would have, but that will not happen. Certainly not promoted by FIFA itself.
Well, all of you, thank you so much for your participation. Thanks for everybody who clicked on. Please remember this will be on YouTube, living on in eternity, like FIFA apparently. And so, you know, anytime you want to rewatch it or tell your friends to rewatch it, and have a good time at the World Cup.